Let's go inside Oceanside, the largest and northernmost city in coastal San Diego County. Inside Oceanside explores unique locales, introduces you to interesting people, and brings you to the center of exciting events in Oceanside and around North County. In this month's edition, we drop in on Operation Appreciation, a celebration and day of thanks for members of the military and their families. The intriguing history of Oceanside's East Side neighborhood is explored. Then, we visit with a local author whose work has helped put Oceanside on the literary map. We follow a trail of Oceanside homes sporting water-wise native plant gardens. Then we visit an Oceanside organization that integrates special needs children with typical children for a more nurturing and well-rounded experience for all. Operation Appreciation is a beachside day of thanks and acknowledgement for military members and their families. KOCT stopped by for the festivities.
The City of Oceanside holds an event called Operation Appreciation for Marine sailors and their families. This celebration has 3 objectives: food, fun, and recognition for their service to their country.
Operation Appreciation is an annual salute to the military, sponsored by the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce, the City of Oceanside, and the Armed Services YMCA. It's our time to give back to the active duty military.
We can't ask for anything more than having great neighbors to the north and our wonderful heroes, men and women at Camp Pendleton that help us every day.
Some of the activities we provide are free rides for all the children, face painting. We have tons of sponsors out here today that are providing free things for everything from personal 5-minute massages to free hats and balls and trinkets. And the highlight of the day is probably the free meal being served inside the rec center, which is actually being served by the senior enlisted and officers from Camp Pendleton. It's not often that the military gets a chance to have the boss serving them chow, and that's a good thing.
Operation Appreciation also offered the chance to explore and learn about different military vehicles and equipment. We even got an informational tour of the crowd's favorite, the hovercraft.
Our main goal is to transport marine vehicles, land to ships. Sucks in 1 million cubic feet of air every second. Got 4 main engines, 1, 2. These are here are the cabins, like fly it. Load master's what I do, loading vehicles up.
I think it's absolutely important to recognize them for many reasons. One, the City of Oceanside exists because of Camp Pendleton being here originally, and that their business is a large part of what goes on in this town. 2 is just simply the very fact that we're able to own and operate businesses in Oceanside is due to what the military is doing for us every day. The fact that these young men and women in uniform put their lives on the line every day all around the world so we can continue to live free, and this is just our opportunity to say thank you. The business community thanks them, the city thanks them, and it's just a great opportunity here today.
We think Operation Appreciation is really great. We're really glad that all these people came out just to say thank you to us. We're just proud to serve. We'd be doing what we're doing, even if no one was out here.
We really do count on the business community to step to the plate and provide the funds. As you know, to put on an event of this magnitude, it's not cheap. There's a lot of coordination, a lot of things that have to be brought to the forefront, but our businesses in the City of Oceanside and around the City of Oceanside have always supported the Chamber of Commerce and supported the military community.
There's definitely a large military presence, and it's easy to see that all the businesses and everyone around really supports them and recognizes them for what they do.
As a retired Marine, this means a lot to me. It means a lot to me to be participating and on my side. It means a lot to me to just turn to those young men and women and say, hey, we care about you. When you work inside the gate, the thought process is that the people outside the gate, they don't know what we do and they don't care what we do. And the reason I'm here today and the reason I want to be a big part of this is to show these young men and women that we do care what you do and we are here to support you in what you do.
Happy families, good eats, and support for our troops. For this operation, mission accomplished. For Inside Oceanside, I'm Bobby Polsky.
The Oceanside Historical Society, the Public Library, and residents of Oceanside's East Side neighborhood teamed up for a day of nostalgia and living memories. Join us as we explore the neighborhood affectionately nicknamed Pozole.
The Oceanside Public Library and Oceanside Historical Society recently teamed up to uncover the history of the East Side community. Residents attended the project's finale to celebrate its amazing story.
We work with the Historical Society often on programs, and I mentioned to Christy that I was interested in doing something about the East Side neighborhood because I live there and also because we serve that community.
The East Side neighborhood is always one that I've been interested in, but it was kind of by accident when I had another program here at the library and I met with Monica Chapo-DeMarc, and we started talking about different program ideas, and I did mention to her that I would love to do a program on the East Side neighborhood, and then Monica was able to hook me up with people, residents, because she's a resident herself, and we had a workshop and we invited residents from the East Side community to come here to the community room and collect photographs and stories.
Christy shared these photos and stories to tell of East Side's history, such as when the neighborhood got its affectionate nickname Pozole.
There was a lady by the name of Anita Cruz Romero who lived there, and she had come to Oceanside around the turn of the century and had bought property. In fact, Mrs. Romero had several pieces of property in East Side, and she was very enterprising. But one of the things that she would do, she would cook the pozole soup, and she would put it in her wagon and go around the neighborhood and say, pozole, pozole. And Aurora relayed to me that people would, all over the neighborhood, would buy her soup, but also workers, field workers from Rancho Santa Margarita and around would come to enjoy her soup.
Many residents contributed photographs to the East Side History Project, all of which told their personal stories of East Side.
I was born in Oceanside. I was born in 1928 on Archer Street. Right off Mission Avenue, right there behind Econo Lube. I was born in that little house right there in 1928. In 1930, we bought the house on San Diego Street, which is 306 San Diego Street. We bought the house there. And in 1959, I got married and I moved to 709 San Diego Street.
Peter Magana married in East Side's remodeled St. Mary's, the community's first church.
Many of you will remember the original St. Mary's. And St. Mary's, of course, is located on 3rd and Ditmar, or Pureview Way in Ditmar. And the original building there, you'll see, was built in 1893. The original location was on the corner there, and they moved it when the new St. Mary's was built. And eventually, then this little chapel made its way to Lemon Street. And that's, you'll remember, it's now known as the Lemon Street Chapel.
Going to school, the first 4 years, they had what they call the Americanization School. And that school was in existence from 1931 to 1941. I went to that school in 1935. That was my first grade. And you had to be 7 years old to attend school. We did not have kindergarten. And if you was of Mexican descent, that's where you went. Whether you could speak English or not, that's where you went.
I went to North Oceanside School, which is now Coco's, the restaurant. And then we went to Mission Road School. And then I went to Laurel. We were the first students to be a grand opening for Laurel School. I remember growing up in Oceanside, I had such a good time. You know, we were young, we were innocent, and we just had so much fun there in the neighborhood.
The neighborhood, I think, is more integrated now than maybe that it was in the 30s and 40s, because, of course, again, it was mostly a Mexican-American population. But the changes, and of course, again, you know, the Laurel School and the community centers, you know, what a difference that neighborhood, you know, in transforming, even just to get paved streets and a sewer system in the 1950s. And it's changed to a certain extent because, you know, some of those early residents, of course, are now dying out, and some of maybe long-time residents are moving out. So it's an ever-growing, ever-changing community.
When it was established, there were a lot of really close-knit families who were just working really hard and doing their best in this new place. And I think it went through a time where it got sort of a bad reputation, and there's some things that were going on with gang activity and things like that.
The gang was real active, and they had literally taken over our neighborhood. Our park, Joe Balderrama Park, was gang turf, but us and some of the people that I went to school with, we said, we're not going to stand for this. This is our home. So we got together, commenced to have meetings, and we actually got our neighborhood back.
Eastside is one of those communities, just one of those little gems that you don't necessarily know about, but it has a story in and of its own. And I just love to be able to bring those out and to share them with the public, not only to honor the people of Eastside and give them their due, but then also bring those stories out to share them with the rest of the community.
There are many untold stories not only in Eastside but in all of Oceanside, and the Library and Historical Society will continue to bring these stories back to life. For KOCT, this is Julia Swain.
Victor Villasenor is an internationally acclaimed local author who has overcome many obstacles to become successful, and whose latest work tells his own coming-of-age story. Join us as we step off the page and into the world of Victor Villasenor.
100 yards past tract homes, squared lawns, and blocked concrete lies the land of Victor Villasenor, best-selling Mexican-American author who has graciously invited us to his rancho here in Oceanside.
I was born and raised here. My parents were both born in Mexico, and they came here during the Mexican Revolution. My father came in 1915 to this country. My mother came in 1922. And then they met in this country and married, and their whole life after marriage has been here in Carlsbad in Oceanside, North County. I didn't speak English when I went to school, and the first thing that happened was, no Spanish, English only, and then we were slapped and beaten, and then I flunked the 3rd grade because I'm dyslexic, couldn't learn to read, flunked it twice.
And forbidden to use his familiar Spanish, Victor found himself alienated from both his classmates and his fellow Mexican Americans.
My language was taken away, my culture was taken away. I had become Americanized to the degree that I hated being Mexican, I was ashamed of being Mexican, everything.
At 19, after many failed attempts at school, Victor left for Mexico, where he not only discovered the music, speech, and colors of his people, but he also discovered who he was and glimpsed at what his future could be.
I found the whole world different. And I began to understand that to speak Spanish wasn't horrible. Everybody spoke Spanish in Mexico and didn't get hit in the head. So then I became proud of being Mexican and came back, and how am I going to deal with the United States? But my father told me, that's our country. Your older cousins and uncles died in World War II in Korea. Your grandmothers are buried in Corona and at Oceanside. That's our country. We paid for it in blood.
It took Victor Villasenor 20 years to learn to read, and it took nearly as long to finish his first book, Reign of Gold, the true story of his parents during the Mexican Revolution.
Because it took me 16 years to write Reign of Gold. My mother always kept saying, why do you keep rewriting my story? And your father says, we just had ordinary lives, you know, you're wasting your time, you're never going to sell it, you know, it's really not that important. My father, on the other hand, hated Reign of Gold and wanted me to not get it published and talk to a lawyer to stop me from getting it published. And I said, what is it, Papa? And he said, well, you put in there that I barely know how to read. And I said, Papa, this story isn't just about you. It's about your mother, it's about the other people. Reread it. And then he said, well, it's not so bad, maybe. Then he reread it just before he died. And the night before he died, he said to me, Mijo, I just finished the book for a 3rd time. And I want you to know that if you had made $100 million, I wouldn't be more proud of you. This book is
Victor's most recent book, Crazy Local Love, tells the story of Victor's life as a young man, a coming-of-age tale of a boy struggling to find his culture, language, and place in the world.
Burro Genius goes from 5 years old to 16 years old and is full of all the problems of that age group. Then Crazy Local Love goes from 16 to 20. The compliment that to me makes is so beautiful is when somebody said, your books changed my life. Thousands of kids have said to me, you know, you came and talked to me when I was in grammar school, when I was in high school, and because of you and then reading your books, it changed my whole life. Instead of going to prison like some of my older brothers and cousins, I'm a teacher now.
Before our leaving his rancho, Victor gave us books, fruit from his trees, a smoothie made with his own hands, and a few lucky pennies. He did in fact give us something much more valuable, the hope that our world not only could be, but will be, a better, more loving and peaceful place.
I want people to realize that my books are wonderful and holy and part of creation too, and their books are equally important, and their stories are equally, and that there's only one race, the human race, and that we're going into peace and harmony all over the planet, whether people like it or not. You take anybody's life, and you stay there and you groom it and groom it and groom it and remember more and remember more, and anybody's life becomes wonderful. The way you live life isn't by wanting to be safe and not make mistakes. Go out into the world, screw up, and that's how you learn.
With the specter of water rationing looming on the horizon, water conservation is on the minds of many Oceanside residents. Come along as we take a tour of Oceanside homes whose plants and trees are prime examples of water-wise native plant gardens.
If you own a home and want to cut back on expenses like your water bill, then strap on your shoes and let's take a tour through Oceanside. Why? Because there's 15 homes going native. That means planting native plant species in their yards.
This is agave americana, which is a Mexican agave or a century plant.
The tour takes visitors from home to home, showing them Oceanside's native plants and even lets them into the backyard.
Native plant gardens are ones where people are using plants that were here before people arrived in California. So these were the plants that got here naturally.
So this is a juxtaposition of fast growing and slow growing.
This is the 7th annual Native Plant Home Tour. Our guide, Greg Rubin, takes us up and down the streets, stopping at each home to point out native plants.
Good year might grow 6 to 12 inches. Elderberries can grow 6 to 12 feet in a year.
Along the way, Rubin squashes native plant myths.
Number one is that natives are going to look dead, brown, and ugly for half the year. And you deal with that by putting in a lot of evergreen, colorful foliar natives for the backbone. And the other myth is that you can only plant natives in fall. Thank God it's a wives' tale, because I'm a contractor and I need to work, and if I only work 3 months out of the year, I'd be in trouble. I can't snowplow in summer.
With summer on the horizon and the state enduring water shortages, it's time to think water-wise. Native plants can help mow down water bills, and that's not a myth.
Once you get them established, you can water once a month or not at all. Definitely saves you money. And if they're happy, they'll spread. And so they'll actually create their own little ecosystem.
Southern California gets little to no rain from May through October. Native plants have adapted to this cycle, unlike exotics.
We lived in one house and had transferred it over to natives and then moved to another, which was all Bermuda grass. And we killed the Bermuda grass, and we don't use very much water at all, but it's 5 units a month, which is pretty low for a family of 5.
Right here is a perfect example of why to plant native plants. This California poppy is thriving in this abandoned garden because it's native, it uses very little water, and requires very little maintenance.
We tend to go once a year, maybe twice a year type of pruning. You can go out every week and, fix things up, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. That's if you start it correctly and you really get the weeds under control.
Want to get started today? Here's what you can do right now.
With the water shortages right now, it may behoove us to do everything like the hardscape and all the structure of the landscape, and then leave the planting in fall, simply because there won't be as much water required, and it'll be cooler and there'll be more moisture in the soil.
Another reason native plants are low maintenance, they don't require fossil fuels, toxic chemicals, or fertilizer.
Worst thing you could do on a native landscape is fertilize or amend the soil. Absolutely the worst thing. You completely destroy the ecology. Yes, the native will respond like it's on steroids. You might get a ceanothus, a wild lilac, growing 6 to 8 feet in a year, and then they'll blow up and die.
One of the best native plants to get started with is deer grass.
Makes a nice green tuft, and then real tall fronds come out of it, and it blooms in the summer.
You can see native plant gardens are full of life. They have depth and height, feature small and tall plants. The arrangements are far from boring or flat.
You can have a lush green lawn of deer grass. You can have, there's probably 10 different kinds of grasses. It doesn't work exactly like a lawn where you make the whole things flat in one thing. It's more interesting. It has texture and height in certain areas, and you can make little places of native plants. But most of our native plants are leafy green plants. We only have 1 or 2 cactuses, and that's what people typically think of.
Along with saving water, native plants can protect homes from fire.
The key is to use plants that are lower growing right around the house, that have less fuel volume, and more importantly, to give them just a little bit of summer moisture. Maybe 2 to 3 times a week, give them a 1/4 inch of rainfall with the sprinkler system. That tiny bit of hydration makes all the difference in the world.
Here's one more reason to go native. They support local ecology, unlike exotic plants that haven't had the time to fully adapt and can take over native species. The result? Local habitat is left without food or shelter. I'm Crystal Cheshire for KOCT.
Together We Grow is a care facility that integrates children with special needs with typical children in a dynamic classroom environment that creates rewarding experiences for all children. We visit the Oceanside facility to see miracles in the making.
Together We Grow is a place where all children can receive care and support in a nurturing environment.
The name Together We Grow is because we have an inclusive program that includes both typical children and medically fragile children. Both populations gain from having the experience and the exposure to each other and the wide diversity of not only race but abilities that we have in our center, hence the name Together We Grow. A long time ago, we were doing nursing care for special needs children at home. And we had a lot of difficulty with the kids when they tried to go to school. They just weren't used to having to do all the things that would make them successful at school, and they failed. So we wanted to accomplish 2 things. We wanted to accomplish success for the children so that they could be integrated into a typical population classroom. And we wanted to have the parents have somewhat of a normal life by having an ability of having a space that was safe for their children so that they could continue to go to school, raise a family, or have a job.
If we did not have Together We Grow, one of us would have to stay at home and care for Charlie. We would be an impact financially for us because we would not both be able to work.
The mission of Together We Grow is to make each child and each family the best they can be with a little bit of extra help from their friends. If you take a child who's been a care receiver all of their lives and you enable them to be a caregiver, even if it just means pushing someone else's wheelchair down the hall, you've changed their role and their self-image forever. So our mission is to make it possible for these kids to reach the highest potential that each individual child can reach.
The medical kids that are here they try to attain more. So if they see a child running and they could only combat crawl, they maybe try to lift their knees up and they just try to aspire to do more. We have spastic quadriplegics, paraplegic children here, and most of them, in conjunction with their medical diagnosis, they are developmentally delayed. So, you know, we try to address all of their needs medically and emotionally in a preschool, in a school setting, so they feel part of, you know, the school and not just isolated at home.
They learn spelling, they learn how to count. They have games all the time that includes that. They have fun activities for them. They have an enclosed playground out here where the kids can play safely, and they're watched by the staff. And the staff, there's 4 or 5 at all times on the playground watching these kids closely to make sure that they don't hurt each other or get hurt.
Sometimes the parents that bring their medical children here are just exhausted. They work all day, you know, and when they pick up their child, their work is not finished because they have to then care for a medically fragile child with, you know, 3-hour feedings or catheters every 4 hours. So just letting them know that we're here for them, and when we have our weekend respite, our weekend programs where they can drop the children off on a Friday and come back on a Sunday, just to give them a chance to catch their breath and to be with their other children or be with their husbands that they've been neglecting probably, all week. It just makes me feel good to know that we can provide a service like that for families to keep them together.
When they have respite especially, I'm able to spend time at home and get some sleep, which I don't normally get during the week. I'm able to go out and do things on the weekend when he is here. I'm able to take a trip if I need to, or go see a baseball game, things that I wouldn't normally be able to do if he wasn't at the daycare. For Andrew, he has to, because he's wheelchair bound, he's not able to walk, so he needs to be diapered all day. And he needs medicine administered about 5 different times of the day when he is here. So in other places, I wouldn't be able to have that. They wouldn't be able to administer the medicines that he takes on a daily basis. We get up about 4 because his first meds start about 5. It takes me about 2 hours in the morning to get out of the house by the time I get up. And bringing him here is a pretty nice relief, because I know that he's in good hands when I arrive here.
I think that we are an excellent example of what happens from the original concept of when you build it, they'll come. We have staff that are so dedicated and so concerned with the kids that are here. And it's not just taking care of their medical needs. We kind of do their medical needs behind the whole situation, is that they come here and they get to be children, and they get to have fun, and they get to do really interesting, fun projects. In collaboration with the parents of these kids, we help to build the village that raises these children. We work very closely with those families, and the real heroes in this process are these families that, despite all of the things that happen to them, and despite all of the tragedies, not tragedies, but all of the challenges that they have to overcome, still make it through and still do what they need to do. They're certainly my heroes, the families, the ones that work so hard to keep things in place.
This is just a great place to work, and to see the kids integrated, and to, it's just so inclusive. No one is felt to be different, no matter typical or medical, and it's just such a nurturing environment and a great place to bring children to learn about different types of people. It makes me feel good.
What we do is rewarding, because when you see a child that no one ever thought would walk, and you get to see those first steps, it's a miracle. When you see a child who is blind, who is not able to see something and is able to accomplish something that no one thought they would ever do, it's a miracle. When you have a child who is deaf and blind and can experience music through a chair and actually pick up a beat and have her favorite song, that's a miracle. Every day we get to witness and participate in miracles. How more rewarding can you be than that?
And thanks to a place like Together We Grow, it's making life a little easier for Oceanside families. For Inside Oceanside, I'm Fatmasani Unutoa.
Thank you for watching Inside Oceanside. You can see this program, as well as other KOCT programs, on demand at our website, koct.org. Thanks for joining us, and keep watching. We may be in your neighborhood next time on Inside Oceanside.